All right, welcome back, my friends, to All Cars. I am John. It is time for another Motor Week retro review reaction. And this week, it is the car from the 80s that everyone dreams about. And I'm finally getting a chance to do it. It's the 1984 Buick Century Wagon. Yeah, so I'm overly excited about this. I wish this was a little bit later year. I wish it wasn't a wagon as personally. And stay to the end because I have a personal story to tell you about the Buick Century, but I like this car. Okay, don't shoot me, don't flame me, but I like this car, and I'm excited to see what Motorweek says about it. I think it is a flawed car, deeply flawed, but I'm excited to watch this. So as always, it's you and me. We're sitting around, we are chatting and reminiscing. Grab your beverage of choice and let's get into it.
By Lucas Oil and TireRack.com.
And filling in the gap until GM's minivan makes its appearance is this new entry in their A-body line, the 1984 Buick Century Estate Wagon. Along with its counterparts from Chevrolet, Oldsmobile, and Pontiac, this Buick is the largest front-drive wagon made here. And it's a big step for GM, too. It's replacing a rear-drive model that was one of the mainstays of our domestic life. And when you tamper with that kind of a sure thing, you're sure asking for trouble. Naturally, GM knew that all along, so they went out of their way to make sure that the market would accept this new member of the family.
At first glance, there's nothing radical about the styling of our Buick Century wagon. It shares, as do all the A-Wagon versions, the front sheet metal of its coupe and sedan kin.
Okay, so again, first off, I wish they were doing the sedan version. I very strongly dislike the wagon styling, but I like the sedan. It's okay. And this represents such an interesting period for GM right here. This was based on the X-body cars, the absolute dumpster fire that was the Chevy Citation and everything else. But the A-bodies here kind of fixed everything. And what you ended up with was a pretty darn good car, but it's GM straddling two different eras. It was them leaving their full-size, very stodgy cars, let's say, and trying to compete directly with the imports that were unibody and lighter and front-wheel drive and better fuel economy and everything else. But they still had to appeal to Buick traditionalists. Now, I personally think the Sierra is actually a little more attractive. I think the Celebrity is less attractive, and the Pontiac 6000 was pretty well received overall. This is not a groundbreaking, earth-shattering, generational changing car. But it was a good entry, and they all sold really, really well. From a styling perspective, it's okay. And again, it still kind of hits that point of GM trying to straddling two different generations almost. They were trying to compete with the imports, the unibody front-wheel drive imports, but larger, while still appealing to the people that they had captured in the 70s who wanted traditional American styling. And overall, I think that the A-bodies here really kind of did it okay. They're not great, and honestly, especially the Cutlass Sierra and the sedan versions, they almost look like they're on their tippy toes to me. It's a styling thing, it's a personal thing, but they almost look like they're too tall and that they're stretched up a little bit, just a little on their tippy toes, not hunkered down, not planted. But it is an opinion and a styling thing. So from the front for 1984, I think this is handsome, if not earth-shattering. I mean, the Yugo is coming and the BMW 3 Series here. This is, it's okay. It looks reserved, a little too much chrome, bumpers are a little too big, little boring. But you know what? It's not bad looking.
Along with a strong family resemblance to other division models. That should go a long way in reassuring potential customers that they're not just getting a pig in a poke package. In fact, the lines of the Century are by far the cleanest of any GM wagon to date. The severe sloping rear hatch not only improves aerodynamics, but also keeps the back glass clear in the rain by strategically directing the airflow. And that's where we'll start our tour. Our Century's hatch is a two-piece design that allows the glass portion to open separately for loading of small articles. Or you can raise the entire hatch for bulkier cargo. Since there is no intrusion from a rear drive differential, the cargo floor could be made very low. In fact, there is so much room under the chassis that there is also space for a lockable storage bin and a real live rear-facing third seat for 7-passenger hauling.
Oh, mercy. This is something that I am glad went away from American cars. And the sad thing is I was about to say, you know what, I've never noticed that the glass wasn't completely flat, that it actually tilted just a little bit there at the end. Having the glass separate from the hatch, you know, a nice feature, a super nice feature if you just want to throw something in after you've been shopping. That tailgate went up high so you could walk under it. GM had not completely forgotten how to build cars that customers wanted and used. There were a lot of problems in the 80s and the 90s and the 70s. Okay, but they still knew what they were doing. They still had decades of experience building things for customers. But these rear-facing seats were dumb. My parents had them in their Oldsmobile, and they had, you know, you think the seats are for the kids, but they had ashtrays back there. Why squeeze this in here? GM wasn't forward-thinking enough to put a third row in this, facing the right way, or just leave this out entirely and create a big bin under the floor. I'm glad these went away. That's what I'm saying. However, as a kid, cruising down the interstate in an Oldsmobile station wagon, looking out the back window at the cars, okay, that was kind of fun.
Not since the full-size wagon behemoths of yore have two adults actually been able to squeeze into a wagon's rumble seat. Little features that make the third seat even more inviting include grab handles, a storage nook, an ashtray, and flip-out vent windows.
Okay, so I also have to say here, first off, you've stuck the kids back there. There's an ashtray for them. Thank you, 1970s. But also, that little flip-out storage area, it had two little indents for probably soda cans, right? Or soda bottles. I honestly should do a video about the advancement in in-car cup holder technology, because it is amazing how far they've come and the smart thoughts that we've gotten from a flat piece of plastic with a small little ridge around it hoping to hold your can in place. Wow.
Thanks to a 50-50 split middle bench seat, long items can be carried without total sacrifice of seating for more than two. Cargo space is rated at 74.4 cubic feet, which is 2.6 cubic feet bigger than the wagon it replaces. Weekend handymen and women can carry home those 4x8 sheets of paneling, although they'll have to position it above the wheel wells. While a notchback...
Whoa, stop right there. This is, you know, a mid-sized car, but it's slightly less than that. Intermediate maybe is the classification. It's you know, smaller than the Regal, for example. But this thing was big enough to hold a 4x8 sheet of plywood. Cool as heck, because I'm here to tell you this right here is what every family needs instead of sport utilities. Nobody's going to buy it because it's dorky, but that is what all the utility that people are looking for, all the versatility that people are looking for in all of these $50,000, $60,000 SUVs could be found in this thing right here. I mean, granted, there's, you know, don't flame me here, there's advancements in technology and everything else, of course, but interesting. I did not know it was that big inside. That's what the point is.
Front bench is standard. Our top-of-the-line Century Estate wagon came equipped with a 55-45 split seat and the backrest recliner option. And with the electric adjustment of the driver's position, there wasn't anyone on our staff who couldn't get comfortable.
I'm sorry. I miss the split bench seats. I really do. I had a couple of them, and they were always supremely comfortable. And yes, you know, I like my center console, but I miss bench seats. I really do.
In fact, all passenger dimensions are roughly the same as the old car, and the interior trim of velour and wood-tone plastic again tells you this is still a Buick. Unfortunately, so does the dash. While the basic layout of controls is just fine, the optional electronic cluster on our car is a lot of effort for nothing. For $299, we expect something more than just fuel, speed, and trip odometer. On the other hand, GM's new $175 cruise control is excellent. Complete with a tap-up or tap-down speed feature, it is much smoother and more accurate than GM's old unit, which was among the industry's worst.
So before we move on, miserable dashboard. It really is. Perhaps better than what they were doing in the 70s, but I'd kind of argue with that. The controls are more logically placed up high, but it does look like an explosion. And the base dash on this had the long speedometer that went all the way across, as I recall. I don't think they ever had a more circular speedometer. I've never seen one personally with the digital gauge cluster. Again, this all kind of feeds into the GM, like, this is how we've always done it, but we're trying to compete with newer imports, and some of the stuff just, they weren't ready to make that jump. You know, simplified gauge cluster and simplified, more ergonomic controls. They really didn't go through the controls right there. I need to go back and look at it regarding the AC and things like that. I imagine it had slides with bi-level. You know, I miss all that. It just looks kind of a mess. It looks kind of hodgepodge with cheap wood looking plastic. It's a cheap interior. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think they could have done a lot better. I really do. But volume, right?
Our wagon came equipped with Buick's own 3-liter, 110 horsepower V6 petrol power plant. This engine is also available in the old Sierra wagon, and we find it to be a slightly smoother motor than the Chevrolet-made 2.8-liter V6 found in the Celebrity and Pontiac 6000 models. All GM wagons come standard with a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder, and a 4.3-liter diesel is available. But it is the V6 gasser that will be most popular, since even with it, full-range acceleration is just good enough. 0 to 60 miles per hour takes 14.5 seconds. But bottom range torque is abundant, so even loaded, initial acceleration away from a stoplight seems brisk. While the standard 3-speed automatic was smooth shifting in most cases, there was some lag going into passing gear. So we would have preferred a time better than our recorded 6.4 seconds from 40 to 55. The optional 4-speed overdrive automatic would be our choice.
You know, it's easy to be critical at this point about those, you know, from our time looking back, these horsepower numbers. But this wasn't long after the EPA and the regulations regarding emissions led to detuning and catalytic converters and everything else, and the industry was trying to figure out how to get the power back up. Interesting, they didn't say the power difference between the 6 and the base 4-cylinder, but I don't know. I'm okay with the engine. It's not as good as the 3800 series, but it's a good enough engine. I personally haven't heard a ton of complaints about it over the years. Funny, they say it's better than the 2.8 liter in the Chevy. But that time is really slow. What they don't say exactly is, because it looks like it was tuned with gearing and with torque low, more for city driving. This is not a race car, but in terms of driving around the city, driving back and forth to work, picking things up from Home Depot, which didn't exist at the time, perfect. Merging onto the interstate, little more questionable. But, you know, I don't want to be too critical for the time period. This was 1984.
Of course, since this is a station wagon, one must be generous when speaking of performance. The Century is a lot better than most, but it's still a wagon. In braking, that means some premature locking of the rear brakes and a slight tendency of the lightly loaded tail to swing, all present and accounted for, unfortunately. But the wagon is easily controlled, plus the Century's hard stopping average of 123 feet from 55 was very short.
Jump in there about that. Not bad. Again, a little drama, and it's a little concerning to me that he's like, it's a wagon, so it's expected to have lockup and the rear end sliding around. I'm not sure I agree with that, but this was years before ABS became really a thing. The distance, not bad, and the fact is that the lockup and the rear end kind of turning around a little bit there, not horrible. So for the time, not a bad performer.
Handling also is better than typical for a wagon, even if our estate did wallow around most corners. The steering is light, with little feel, but plenty quick for its mission. Here, the smooth riding springs and General Seal tires need some upgrading if any serious slinging around is intended.
Okay, so I've got to stop it right there. So let's see, it's got light steering, wallowy suspension. It's not from the factory, intended to be put through a slalom. Yeah, it's a Buick. That's exactly how they should handle. What I want to know is the highway ride, how many miles am I getting per gallon, and exactly how soft is the ride.
The potential of the A-Wagon to become sportier is well known, as Chevrolet is already offering a Celebrity Eurosport package for its model, and rumor has it a Pontiac 6000 STE wagon is under serious consideration. While Motorweek has complained about how much road many front-wheel drive cars need for a U-turn, the Century Estate escapes our wrath. 38 feet curb to curb is fine for any car this size. On the open highway, you'll also appreciate how quietly the Buick Century rides. At 55, only 68 decibels of outside intrusion were recorded. There's no wagon boominess or excessive wind rustle around the tailgate. Combine that with respectable EPA fuel economy ratings of 19 city and 33 highway, and an actual test loop of 26, and you can't escape the fact that GM and Buick have done their homework well on this new Century Estate.
So, 68 decibels, not incredible. That's not bad, don't get me wrong, but that's not incredible. And for the price point, the size point that this is really aiming for, it's pretty good. 33 miles per gallon highway, my opinion, 1984, small six, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic with a 3-speed automatic. There was a time there in the 80s, part of the 90s, where specifically GM, they had cars that were a little bigger. They had to use often V6s to get the same power and performance as a 4-cylinder import. And oftentimes they had to do it with a 3-speed transmission when other manufacturers were moving to 4. But what they managed to do was tune everything so it got really good gas mileage on the highway. Now around town, you're hauling this car with a 6-cylinder, that 19, nothing I'm jumping up and down and excited about, but 33 on the highway, freaking pretty darn good. That's pretty impressive.
There is no question in our minds that the new GM A-Wagons, including our Century, are a good step forward in efficient family transportation. And with prices ranging from $8,200 for the least expensive Chevy version to our fully decked out Buick at almost $15,000, there appears to be a model for almost any budget. The Buick Century Estate Wagon is indeed a smooth riding carryall with excellent use of interior space and no major performance shortcomings, and should succeed as a new American station wagon tradition.
Okay, so optioning it out, gets you double the price. That is unbelievable. Cool review. Again, I wish it was the 4-door sedan. I know my comment there would be about the trunk has absolutely no cut down to the bumper. But very much what I remember. So I told you I was going to tell you a personal story, and I've said before on this channel, right? My parents were never really into cars. My father was when he was younger. I mean, he had MGTCs and TDs, and the earliest car I can really remember is a Fiat 124 Spider. My dad had interesting stuff. I also remember a Datsun pickup truck and a Oldsmobile 88, I believe it was. But when I came of age and started reading car magazines and getting interested, we had an Oldsmobile station wagon and a Buick Regal, and the Buick Regal became my first car to drive. And so I kind of was baked into these large, comfortable American cars, and I still love those. I miss some of that big, heavy isolation. And my mom was always frustrated by it a little bit. And I don't know what she really wanted. Did she want me to like a Honda Civic? Did she want me to like the Toyota Corolla? But I remember we had gone to visit our grandparents, and they lived in Canada. And I don't remember why, but we had rented a Buick Century. And I'm going to guess this was about 84, because it was before I could drive. And maybe 85, something like that. And we got in this car, and I was like, I love the back seat, and it had so much room, and it felt almost as roomy as our 76 Buick. And she was like, do you like this car? I was like, I love it. Absolutely love it. And she's like, why? And that kind of personifies this car for me. It is deeply, deeply flawed. The exterior is not that great styling. It looks cheap, and some of the panel gaps and things like that. I'm trying to a lot for the fact that it's 1984, but it looks kind of just haphazardly boring. At the same time, the dashboard should have been a revelation, but GM was really behind the curve in where dashboards were going, and this just, they were trying to compete with imports while also keeping Buick. And to me, it just didn't quite work. And even with a more basic dashboard, it just felt long without ever looking neat and tidy and upscale. But my remembrance of this car was that it performed well, it handled like a Buick, it rode well, and it was really comfortable. And I always kind of wanted one, but I never had one. So this is a cool trip down memory lane. I don't love it. I don't quite love it. When I look back and like somebody's, here's some money, go buy a car from 1984. I don't think the Century is going to pop up to the top of the list. But eventually it would sit in there and I'd be like, yeah, you know what? I'd kind of like to drive one for 6 months. If you have any memories, guys, let me know below. Otherwise, I appreciate you being here. Thanks much.